Senior Living Locators on the hot seat. Coming up next. All right, Matt, let's start with you. Then we'll get to the brand. How did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Yeah, no, good question. So I'm a physical therapist by trade. I started practicing in 2002, and I'm a geriatric certified specialist. So I worked primarily in assisted living communities for 15 plus years. And I worked for a company where I was a therapist who would go from community to community treating our patients. And one of the things I noticed, and quite often actually, is a lot of my patients were being misplaced, meaning they were going to communities that they never really should have been in to start with. And it resulted in them having to, I called it carrying out of the facility. So in 2019, I went to my wife and I said, hey, listen, there's a need here. These families, they just don't know what they're looking for when they look for assisted living. And I don't know if you've ever had a personal experience of placing a loved one or a family member, but it's a very confusing and stressful process because the assisted living communities, they're not all created equal. They all do different things as far as care is concerned. So in 2019, we opened Senior Living Locators here in Northern Kentucky. Now, when I say Northern Kentucky, we're located just about 5 miles south of downtown Cincinnati. So we're right there on the border. And we were having quite a bit of success, and we just kept expanding. We were getting calls for over and across the river in Cincinnati. Then we started getting calls for Lexington, Kentucky, which is about an hour south of here. So I really didn't expect it to grow like it did. So in 2021, I asked my wife, who her background is occupational therapy, but at the time she was a VP of sales and marketing for a home care company. So I told her, I was like, listen, I need some help here. I'm not able to give my clients the customer service they need and deserve the way I would like to. So I need you to jump on board. So she left her job in 2021 and she joined me, and we just kind of grown ever since. And then we came to the realization probably in the beginning of 2023, because we just kept growing. I was like, I think the best way to do this is franchising. So, I read a lot of books on franchising, got connected with a lot of good people. We've partnered with SMB and Brand One, and we officially launched Trua, which is the name of our franchise, TRUA. Trua was launched officially in August of 2024. And that's kind of where we're at. We have 2 franchisees with, we have a total of 4 territories, and we're in the process of closing a few more deals as we speak.
What a good story. So you go through the process of building up this business. Just out of curiosity, do you have the franchise lens when you're going through it, or did it just come to the realization that in order for us to expand, we need to do this? Were you setting up the operational structure of the business with franchising in mind?
Not at all. That's funny you say that, because I was working with a business coach, and we were talking about this need, like how are we going to accommodate this growth? And one day we were in a session. He's like, hey, have you thought about franchising? And I said, honestly, I haven't. So we just did a lot of research. Like I said, I was, reading some books, trying to find people in the franchise industry that could give me some advice. And yeah, that's how we put systems and processes in place so that we could, kind of get the franchise process started. And that's how we were connected with SMB.
You go through the process of franchising the business. What are your expectations when you start that process, and how did those realities play out?
To be honest with you, since I've never done this before, I didn't know what to expect, because you don't know what you don't know. But I was told that this, people, especially working with SMB, they would, obviously, before they wanted to bring me on as a partner, they wanted to see all the financials and get to know me as a person. And they were very confident that this would grow pretty quickly. So, how was I going to accommodate that growth? The first thing I wanted to really focus on is, who do I actually want to bring into the system? There's a certain culture I want to, Trua franchisees to represent. And, first and foremost, we're in a business where we're dealing with people's lives. and we're dealing with people's lives in a very stressful point of their life. So imagine you've been living alone independently in your house for 30, 40 years, and now something happens, whether you have a fall, heart attack, stroke, whatever it may be, and now you're faced with the reality, I can't go back to living on my own anymore. And this just happened, just like that. So it's a pretty stressful process to have to go through this. We mainly deal with the adult children when we work through this, and they're just as stressed as our actual clients. So kind of goes back to my point, is the people we want to bring into the Trua system, first and foremost, you got to have a big heart. You got to have compassion for people, especially when working with people in such a stressful point in their lives. So just have that empathetic heart and really caring for helping others.
I think about the category, and I have various feelings on it. I'm going to give you an insight in a second based on what you just said. On the franchisee front, like obviously there's a ton of brands in senior care. Now you're creating a point of differentiation in the way that you're approaching this. You're helping them find the solution and coaching them through the next stage of their life versus all the caregiving that comes alongside it. So you're in the category, but maybe not as traditional as what a traditional senior care brand would be. My challenge is, and it's not a huge challenge. It depends on the broker network. Obviously, like that's where the bulk of your deals are going to come from, at least in the early stages. My challenge with the broker network is if they want their candidate to get pushed through, they're going to push for you to sign that candidate. And I think what you just said is so critical for brands that end up being, the 1%, the over 100 units, is holding true to the culture.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to say no if the wrong person comes in a world where obviously they are the tail that wags the dog?
Honestly, Nick, I just say no, and I have plenty of times, and I won't bend on that. Like I said, the culture is very important to me, especially with the line of work that we're in. And this is a very relationship driven business. So word of mouth referrals, it's big. So I can tell when people are in it for the right reasons. And like I said, if I don't feel like somebody is the right fit, I'm not going to explain myself away. I'm just going to say, hey, I don't feel like you're the right fit. This is who we're looking for.
Yeah. I may have shared this story with you before, but we work with a senior care brand. I had their franchisee on our podcast, and I said, tell me about your buying process. They said they took care of their aging parents. They passed away. They want to get into senior care. They ended up buying a senior care brand, but the franchise broker said you should own a donut brand or a soccer brand. And it's only because of the amount of commission that's being paid there. That's obviously my challenge with the industry. Like you're so transparent in the service offering that you're having that just hearing you say, I'll say no. That if that means I burn the bridge with the broker, I burn the bridge with the broker. But we have to hold it true. So I do appreciate that. My insight for you is when you go into franchising, it's a whole nother business. And I still think it's such an easy gap to close. Like I land on your website and there's an older person sitting down with the caregiver taking care of them. Well, there's some compassion in what you do. That's not your client when it gets over to the franchise site. Your client is someone who's a business professional who has probably dealt with an aging parent that wants to explore going into business for themselves and a business that they can be compassionate about. And so when I look at franchise websites in the space, it always goes to an older person, but that's not who the demographic is. So that'd be statement one. And the statement two is, I believe total room, and there's not a ton of franchise competition in the space. There are some that do similar things to you, but if I bought the site, I'm going from here's our positioning, which right now I say become your own boss while offering a valuable service. I think right off the bat is your story. Physical therapist saw the gap, built a business with his wife, like that's the avatar. And then underneath that, it's like, okay, well, how does the financial side of this work? Because in the broker world, the majority of people are coming to the table as call it a mid to senior level executive that is saying, okay, how can I, step one, replace my income, and then step two, build wealth for my family. And so when I think of like, how can you be a disruptor in that, I would kick it off with your story, because you're the avatar of who a franchisee is. And then I'd follow that up with, here's how the construct of the business works. That'll give you a point of differentiation automatically, because right now I could put any senior care logo on there and it would be very similar.
Yeah. And, and to be honest with you, in 2019, I thought about franchising myself. Well, I went through the process with a couple different franchises. And when I went through the process, I realized it doesn't solve the problem that I'm seeing as a clinician in the field. So there's got to be a different way. Yeah. So that's what, in my opinion, what makes us different is we do placement from a clinical standpoint. Now, having said that, you do not have to be a clinician. You don't have to be a therapist, nurse, doctor, any of that to enter the Trua brand. The systems and processes were already put in place. It's a plug and play. But what I mean by that is we developed a software so that when we take our intake form and we plug it into our software, it will eliminate the communities that will not be appropriate for that person. And we have a lot of criteria that we use, but it's very specific what we're looking for. And that just comes from me working, 15 years in assisted living communities, knowing, what to look for, what to look, not to look for, and what this place will take, what this place won't take. So yeah, I felt like the software was very important to develop to differentiate ourselves from, the other competition.
Okay. So this is, I like aha moments when we're having a conversation. Write down the 11-minute mark, watch that back. Here are the two things that I heard. If I'm going to blow up your franchise website, the two things I heard: we take a clinical approach. That's the gap. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a clinical background to be in this. That's the solve. Like, that's how business people get in here. Mm-hmm. And we over-invested in our technology so that there's an ease of operation for the business owner. Like, those three messages are nowhere to be seen on your website. You listen back to the 11-minute mark, play that back, and put that to work. I think that will help you solve the gap. Let's continue on the brand. All right. So my assumption is Senior Living Locators into Trua probably was trademark.
Yes, okay. Sir.
Right. So you go through this. Obviously, going through a franchise, you could call yourself whatever you want at that point. So you're going through this process. So Trua gets created. You find the point of differentiation in the lens of clinical that's going into this. What other points of differentiation do you have? Or do you even need a point of differentiation because the demand is so high?
Well, I do feel like separating yourself from competition is very important. That's why, we really stress the clinical and the software. But there's not a ton of competition in the space, in my opinion, compared to your private duty home cares, like the in-home care model. So I felt like there was a need for the actual service itself, but then B, I also wanted to help people who were in a situation like I was back in 2019, because honestly, I didn't want to do physical therapy for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be 65 years old and lifting people, off of beds and off of chairs. Physical therapy is kind of a young man's game. So I know I wanted to get into something else where I could help people that wanted to leave their career, whether that be corporate America or whatever it may be, but just didn't know how, didn't know where to start. So that was really my why as far as starting the franchise.
I'm going to flip into the investment, play my opener. It's still on brand and investment, but physical therapists, like take a brand like Physical that exists right now. As a business, they need licensed physical therapists. That's a big target of theirs because you have to be licensed in the category. Here, and I have a sister-in-law who's a physical therapist. It's wearing on a human. And so I'm sure there's tons of them that are getting to this place where they're like, how much of my life do I want to continue doing this? Does that turn into a persona, and how does the investment align back to what a physical therapist is making? Like, can they even afford the business?
If we're just comparing, are we talking about like a physical therapist salary compared to,
like, could that be a persona?
Yeah, listen, as far as the financials, one can do very well doing this. Okay. I try not to concentrate on the financials, and I know that's important to a lot of people, and I get it, but the core purpose for wanting to enter this business has to be genuinely wanting to help others in a time of need. And I tell my employees and, our current franchisees, look, if your heart is in it for the right reasons and you're doing right by what's, right by your clients and not by what is right for you, the money will follow. So, just having that integrity piece of it.
What's the investment right now?
One territory is 50,000, and we base the one territory's 300,000 people.
Yep.
Then, we offer multi-pack deals. So one territory is 50. If you buy a double pack, it would be 90. So you'd get that second territory discounted to 10,000. Same with the third territory, another 10,000 discounted.
So that's the franchise fee. What's the all-in investment?
All-in investment on the low end is approximately 74,000.
Uh-huh.
On the high end, it's 116,000.
Okay. So not that you're asking for my opinion there. And obviously the franchise fee is what it is, because that's what you almost need that high to play in a broker community. So totally understand that. If I were setting, based on what I know about you and the culture, if I'm setting this up the right way, in my opinion, right way, which right way ends up being like you're going to grow a business that can eventually exit. I would think about that persona of the physical therapist who is clearly gone through education for the right reasons, because they care compassionately about helping other human beings, who hit the burnout factor, exactly what you did, to say, I don't want to be doing this at 65, but what else can I do to impact people? And so if we go to, call it $100,000 investment to get up and going, I think a lot of them could actually afford it. So you've built an affordable business. If it were me, if it comes in organically, I would probably say we're going to escrow $25,000 of that franchise fee, and we're going to give that back to you in marketing. The reason I would do that is because now you're giving them the tools to now grow their business, which in turn you'll cover that based on the royalties that will come in. You will always make the money off royalty, and you can see this by giving away the franchise fee to a franchise broker. I would also maybe consider, like, there's vet fran incentives or other incentives that exist in franchising. I would think about looking at a physical therapist incentive that you'll take X off the franchise fee as a marketing tool, because I think a physical therapist who has busted their butt to go through education to take care of other human beings aligns with you perfectly culture-wise. And if you can give them a little bit more freedom to get into business and show them that we will support you and get you up and running, I think that could be a total point of differentiation on the persona targeting.
No, I think that's a great point. And any creative ideas that come my way, I'm always open to them.
Oh, good. Let's get to the vision. In franchising, we keep on hearing the word fast growth, but slow and steady wins the race. If I were creating a blueprint, I would go 2 units to 4 units to 8 units to 16 units to 32 to 64 to over 100. That's a good game plan for a 5-year roadmap to get there. You're obviously in a category, you've engineered a good business, you put the technology behind it, you're holding true to the culture, you're onboarding these 4 franchisees. What is your vision for growth? What does that look like for the business?
So I just want to make sure we're growing responsibly and not just bringing any person into the brand just to put butts in seats.
Yeah.
And, like I said, I've made that abundantly clear with my partners that I work with. And, when brokers reach out to me, I'm very candid with them. Exactly. Hey, here are the intangibles. Here's the personality traits I'm looking for in, a franchisee. So if that means I'm only growing 1 unit per year, but I get the right people, then so be it. I'm willing to do that. but it, again, I go back to the people have to fit the culture.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you hold true to that, based on everything else that you're doing, you'll build a beautiful business. And I would imagine for the short-term goal, you said 4 franchisees that you have to onboard. So I would imagine the short-term goal is like, let's make sure that they onboard successfully so that we have proof of concept that we can actually duplicate this thing.
Yeah, and they get me for the actual onboarding. So we have our franchisees come into Cincinnati for a week. And, like I said, you're going to get me personally, and Audrey, my wife, who, is also in the business. You get us one-on-one, at least in the beginning. And then I'm going to come to your territory for a week and do some field training with you. So I guess that's one of the advantages of being early in on the brand is you get me one-on-one.
Put that on your website. You have such good stuff going on. And I understand it. Like, a website ends up being pretty templated when it comes to franchising, but it's so impactful. And like the things that I'm hearing, like you have so many tools. You probably could take the philosophies or the practice of being a physical therapist and cross apply that back to a franchisee. Like, you're not going to heal a patient on the first time that you touch them as a physical therapist. There's going to be a process, and you're going to keep breaking through barriers to get there. The same as with franchisees. If you took that and said, this is how we work with franchisees, it's a physical therapist, it's a clinical approach to franchising, like, that would be an interesting point of differentiation that exists. So point being, I think you have a lot of good tools. Keep working at it. I'm grateful that we had a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, this is great. I've really enjoyed this.
For Matt, I'm Nick. This was another Franchisor Hot Seat. And don't go to Senior Living Locators. You can still find it. Go to Trua.
TruaFranchise.com.
There you go. That's the better one. All right.
Yeah.